Today we talk about what do you do once you finally get that positive pregnancy test after an IVF transfer or IUI.
I'm Dr. Mark Amols, and this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday.
The big day has come. You've been waiting for this the entire time, and now you're pregnant. For some of you, that test feels like the finish line. But in reality, it's the starting line for the next chapter, pregnancy. So today, let's talk through what happens next, step by step. Okay, first things first, celebrate. You've been through a lot to get here. I've literally seen patients come in with a Ziploc bag of 20 pregnancy tests, with some showing faint positives and others showing darker positives, like a little museum of hope. And if that's you, you're not strange. That's very normal because you've been working a long time to get to this point. When my wife and I saw our first positive pregnancy test, I took a picture of it and put it on Facebook. I was so excited, I didn't even notice that her pee was still on the stick. Everyone's reaction is different. I've seen couples cry in disbelief because after years of trying, they finally saw a positive test. Now, that may not be your emotions. They might not match that movie moment that you imagined. For some people, they jump for joy. Others feel numb, anxious, thinking, can this be real? And both of these are valid reactions. The point is, let yourself feel what you feel. This is your moment. There is no wrong or right way to feel about it. When we got our positive, we were happy, but we were very cautious because we felt, how could this be? How could we be this lucky? Because we felt like everything was against us. The point is, there is no wrong emotion. Now, when it comes to confirming the pregnancy, the home test is a great start, but the official confirmation comes from the blood test, also called a beta HCG. This is the hormone that's made by the embryo once it implants. And we don't just look at the number, we actually look at the rise of the number over time. A good rule of thumb is that the number should roughly double every 48 to 72 hours. So if your first test is 200, we expect the next one to be close to 400 or higher. Now, technically, it doesn't have to double. It only needs to go up 66%. That means if your number is 100, 166 is considered normal for the next blood test 48 hours later. It's very common to read into these numbers because, again, you worked so hard to get to this point, you start getting scared. Well, why is this number not higher than my friend's number? She had 400 for her first one and mine's only 100. Does that mean my pregnancy is not doing as well? Well, there are things that can affect the HCG level. Things like hydration, the size of the placenta, and even having a biopsy can make the difference because the biopsy takes the trophectoderm cells and the syncytial trophoblasts that make the HCG come from those cells. So if you have a biopsy, it's very possible that the HCG may be a little bit lower. I'm always glancing at the Facebook post where someone says, my number is only 100, and someone else says theirs is 600. And everyone either thinks the 600 has twins, and then funny enough, the 600 had a singleton, and the one who had 100-something ended up having twins. That's because the numbers are not really correlated to everything, but associated with things. Yeah, a really high HCG could mean twins. It also could mean that your baby has a big placenta, is very healthy. Whereas a lower number can be perfectly normal, doesn't mean there's anything harmful. It's the number that rises over time that matters, not the absolute number that you're looking at. Now, after that blood test, the next milestone is going to be the ultrasound. And I'll be honest, this can be very scary waiting that time to get to that ultrasound. Matter of fact, for patients who have multiple miscarriages, I'll sometimes even do multiple blood draws before we get to the ultrasound so they don't have to wait as long. The first ultrasound is very early, around 5 weeks, 3 days to 5 weeks, 5 days. At this point, we're just looking for what's called a gestational sac. This is a sac that's inside the uterus, and one of the important things we want to see on it is the yolk sac. The yolk sac tells us this is a normal pregnancy. If there is no yolk sac, then we don't know if it's not a pregnancy, which could be a pseudocyst, or if it's what's called a blighted ovum. Now, the scary thing is, sometimes you just can't see the yolk sac and you start getting worried. And it's common to be worried. But a lot of times in the next week, when you look again, the yolk sac's there and the fetal heart rate is there. But if you do not have a yolk sac, it's not saying you have an embryonic embryo, but there's a chance. And so definitely talk to your doctor if you don't see both the gestational sac and the yolk sac. Now, around 6 weeks, 3 days, we start to see the heartbeat. It'll start to be a little flicker, and by 6 weeks, 5 days, it's usually a normal heartbeat at a normal rate, somewhere between about 110 and 180. Do not be worried if you don't see a heartbeat prior to 6 weeks and 3 days. That is normal. For many of us, when we see the heartbeat, it's almost like there's this release of stress that, oh my God, it's here. The baby's there. Now, if you were like everybody else and it wasn't hard to get pregnant, you probably would not even think twice about it. But for those of us who went through hell and back to get this pregnancy, it's still scary. Usually your doctor will have you come back for another ultrasound in about a week or two to verify that the pregnancy is growing appropriately. If it is, a lot of times then you are graduated onto your obstetrician or midwife or family doctor. I tend to watch patients a little bit longer, especially if they've ever had a miscarriage. I like to get them past that point because it's something we all fear. How can this be happening to us? It's probably going to end in a miscarriage. And so if you have that fear, it's not unreasonable to ask your doctor, hey, can I get another ultrasound? It make me feel better so I don't have to wait 6 weeks until I see my next doctor. One of the more common mistakes that happen is patients will stop their medications too early. I get it. Progesterone shots suck. Taking estrogen through patches, through injections, even vaginally, is not fun. But those medications are very important, and you should never stop them without talking to your doctor. Even if the pregnancy was natural and you've had miscarriages, your body may not produce progesterone as well. And so if you're on progesterone, you should not stop it until they tell you to, which usually is after 10 weeks when the placenta takes over. In a fresh IVF cycle where you did a retrieval and then are doing a transfer, the body doesn't make progesterone as well because you interrupted those cells. When you went and took out the egg, you also took out granulosa cells, and those are the cells that luteinize to eventually make progesterone. So you don't make progesterone as well, and you need to supplement it with progesterone. And that situation can be vaginal. Some may use injectable. But when it comes to a frozen transfer, your body is not making the progesterone because you didn't ovulate. And in that situation, if you stop progesterone, you could lose the pregnancy. Several times I've had patients stop the progesterone. One time was because she read someone said, you don't have to take it that long, not realizing her situation was different. The other time, unfortunately, and I felt guilty for this, the patient asked me, how long do I have to take the progesterone for? And I said, well, technically until the pregnancy test, because if you're not pregnant, you can stop it. But if you're pregnant, you'll keep taking it. Well, for some reason, and I don't know why, she didn't hear me say, you have to keep taking it. And she stopped it as soon as the pregnancy test was positive. I still to this day feel very guilty about that. I no longer say that anymore. The point is, I don't care what you read online. I don't care what your friend is doing, even if they're doing it at the same clinic. Do not stop medications without talking to your doctor and cause more problems than helpful. When it comes to healthy habits, you want to keep doing the good stuff, such as taking your prenatal vitamins. Make sure they have folic acid in them, so that helps with neural tube development in the first trimester. Eat balanced meals. Don't try some fad diet at that time. And make sure that you stay hydrated. It's always good to drink plenty of water when pregnant. Now for the fun part. One of the bittersweet parts of this entire journey is what we call graduation. This is where you're graduating from the fertility clinic. It's usually around 8 to 10 weeks once you see the pregnancy is developing normally. And that is the point where we transition you from the fertility clinic to your regular OB. Everybody is happy about this step because it means you have made it there. But others, and many of you may feel like you're losing your safety net because where you're going, they're not going to have people sitting there waiting in case you call to get you in right away. Things are going to be a little bit longer between ultrasound scans and getting those constant updates. Now, under OB appointments, they can be every 4 weeks, and that can feel like you're free falling. The good news is the reason why those appointments are out 4 weeks is because you're at a healthy point in your pregnancy that doesn't need to be watched so closely. It may feel like you're being abandoned, but you're not. You're winning because now you have a healthy pregnancy that no longer needs intensive monitoring. But I'm not going to lie, it's scary Because until those symptoms of nausea and vomiting start kicking in, and you last saw your REI doctor at 8 weeks and having to wait until 12 weeks to see your OB doctor, it's scary and you start thinking, what if things aren't good? But statistically speaking, the chances are very small that anything would happen that is bad. The last part I want to talk about is the emotional roller coaster. Infertility doesn't just vanish the moment you see a positive test. Many patients still feel anxious every day, and sometimes more anxious than before. So don't feel weird if that's you. This is normal. If you find yourself struggling, lean on support groups, therapy, mindfulness, or even just journaling some of your thoughts. Sometimes patients tell me they set boundaries with their friends or their family, like asking people not to check in daily, because that helps them not think about as much. The important thing to understand is it's not abnormal to still have anxiety even after you get pregnant. You feel like I shouldn't feel this way. I finally got what I want. Why am I not happy? And you're not broken because you feel that way. It's normal. You've been through so much already. Give yourself some grace. So in closing, what do you do now that you're pregnant after IVF or IUI? You celebrate. You follow your clinic's instructions, you keep your healthy habits, and you prepare for the next chapter. Remember, this is not the end of your story, but a new beginning. You fought hard to get here, and you deserve to experience this with both joy and confidence. You deserve this. This is not a dream. It is a dream come true. Maybe you become pregnant and can relate to some of the things I talked about. Maybe you haven't been pregnant yet and you're looking forward to this and now have this idea of what to expect. Either way, if you like this, know a friend who had something like this, please tell a friend about it. Let us know you loved it by giving us a 5-star review on your favorite medium, and most of all, keep coming back. I look forward to talking to you again next week on Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday.